who was elected the Prime Minister of England, is not serving his people, and he declared as much when he said, I'm not going to sign this Lisbon Treaty Article number 50, which is what's necessary in order for the Brexit to take effect. He said, I'm not going to do this, even though the British people voted that way. I'm voting for the elites, and I refuse to sign it. Let the next person take care of it. Orlando, throughout Paris and around the world, false flag events. A lot of them we can't directly attribute, but I think a lot of them can be attributed to the CIA involvement, creating these problems, instilling fear in people, looking for reactions, and trying to, and that's going to pave the way for the government to come in and say, let us take control and stop all these terrorist threats. Problem, reaction, solution, but it's all by design.
One new gold stock making big headlines since its start last April, acquiring gold for $5 to $10 per ounce in the ground, which is dramatically lower than the $50 to $100 per ounce in the ground other companies have been paying. To learn more about what hard asset investors are calling a mineral bank, visit crushthestreet.com/investright.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I'm joined today with Michael Noonan of EdgeTraderPlus.com. He's got a 35-year history in the financial markets and offers profitable trading ideas to his subscribers. He's an expert on the economy and geopolitics, and I've been wanting to have him on the show for some time now, so it's going to be a real treat for everyone. Michael Noonan, thanks for joining me.
It's a delight to be with you, Ken.
Michael, I've been asking all my guests over the last week about their thoughts on Brexit, and I read a Zero Hedge headline yesterday, actually. It was, elites called to arms. It's time to rise up against the ignorant masses. And I want to ask you, just start you off with this, was Brexit a material blow to the elites in power, and they lose some control over the game they have in place?
It was a blow. As to how material it is, one can never be sure with them because, with the elites, when it comes to them, it's always problem, reaction, solution. So how much of this is by design, or how much of this is now they're scrambling to recover from the shock that was not by design of Brexit, remains to be seen. They're a very strong and potent group, and one can never underestimate how they'll react.
Well, I saw it on your site. It was said, Hotel California Eagles lyrics, and you can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. And is this what we're seeing here with the UK and their exit from the Eurozone? Are they going to actually be able to leave?
Well, that's why I posed that question. I would think not. It's always possible that they will, but the British Parliament can cancel Brexit. There are a few parliamentary ways in which it can be undone. So they're not going to the elites are not going to give up on this very readily.
Well, let's talk about the elites here a little bit. The Rothschilds have essentially been the progenitors of what has become the globalist agenda of creating a new world order to rule over everyone and everything. And I kind of want to go down this direction a little bit with you and kind of get your thoughts on how did it come about? How did they gain this control over the globalist agenda?
Well, it comes back to when the Rothschilds started out in Germany, and they learned the magic of compound interest, and Rothschild discovered that it was much more profitable to lend to nations rather than individuals. So he started funding nations, and in particular, he got involved in the war with England against France, and he was loaning money to England to pay the troops. And what he demanded in return always was gold and silver. He built up an incredible network, and that's really, war puts countries into debt, and so England was never able to fully repay their debt, and he eventually worked his way into control of the Bank of England. And he just kept rinse and repeat on the process of lend, get people into debt, collect on gold and silver, and when they can't pay gold and silver, collect on whatever assets the country has. And that's been ongoing up until today, when you saw it in Greece. Keep lending. When they can't repay, take whatever assets they can. In fact, it happened in 1933 in this country, after the Rothschilds got control of the lending through the Federal Reserve Act of December of 1913. The country went bankrupt in 1933 with FDR. They closed the banking system down for 5 days. That was to switch it from a federal collection of banks over to complete control of the Federal Reserve, and we've been under the Federal Reserve control ever since. People who understand that the European Union is a political union, when they understand that concept, they can then reverse it and begin to realize that the federal government is a political union also, that usurped control over the organic republic that this country was organized under and was turned into a democracy.
Michael, Michael, I wanted to ask you then, how would you say that the Rothschilds are behind the scenes in the EU situation here?
Well, it's not so much the Rothschilds anymore. There's such a layer upon layer of control and individuals involved. And the United States is probably one of the bigger shadows behind the European Union. They're working in concert with Britain. If you recall, Obama went over there trying to give his rah-rah for the stay in the EU and don't leave, and really it backfired on him. I think that was one of the contributing reasons, not the only one, but one of the contributing reasons why people decided to vote out of BREXIT, out of the EU. They deeply resented Obama's saying, you'll go back to the end of the queue, as it were. So it's hard. I wouldn't say it's the Rothschilds in and of themselves. They're more part of a larger collective, and we don't know who all the collective is.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you've been pointing out is that the U.S. has been hollowed out, and I couldn't agree with you more in that analysis. And unless you believe the propaganda, which I know you don't. But interestingly enough, we have Greenspan coming out and saying that this is a disaster and we need a gold standard. And of course, he's not acknowledging his own input into this boom and bust cycle. He's just saying that it's a disaster now. What do you think about this? And, what do you think about this guy who's coming out and saying these things, who was once the Fed chairman?
Well, prior to him being the Fed chairman, he was also one of Ayn Rand's acolytes, and he was a gold bug. And he was recruited by the NWO, the New World Order types, and he became an anti-gold advocate and became chairman of the Federal Reserve. And they all jumped on gold and silver as being barbaric relic. So I would take anything that any politician says with a grain of salt. In fact, consider them outright lies, and realize that Greenspan is just talking out of both sides of his mouth. He's got more liberty to speak more freely now that he's no longer Federal Reserve Chairman. But there's no country that's ever going to go to a gold, I don't think, that will go to a gold-backed currency.
Yeah, it's just really interesting that, obviously a lot of this stuff that we're talking about maybe a few years ago was alternative news, but it's really going mainstream here, especially with everything that's been going on. And obviously guys like him coming out and, even the things that George Soros is saying, Ray Dalio, Stanley Druckenmiller. I mean, people are seeing the problems to a much larger degree, negative interest rates. And the fact that they're actually saying these things is coming out to a larger degree. So I'm just kind of wondering, what is the game plan? What's the narrative? And, maybe the approach to how they're trying to package this whole thing to, again, tape it all together with, glue, spit, and gum. It's they're losing control, and I'm just curious to see where they will take it. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I'm not sure that they're losing control. Again, always remember, problem, reaction, solution. They are experts at dealing with problems, creating them, watching what the reaction is, and then coming in with their white horse, as it were, solutions, which they anticipated would be the result from the problems that they generated. So, to the degree, I think this probably is a shake-up to a degree within the New World Order, because they didn't expect that Brexit would occur, and now they'll deal with it. They'll run interference. It's like the Hotel California scenario. They may never let them leave. So there needs to be a lot more time on this. Cameron, who was elected the Prime Minister of England, is not serving his people, and he declared as much when he said, I'm not going to sign this Lisbon Treaty Article number 50, which is what's necessary in order for the Brexit to take effect. He said, I'm not going to do this, even though the British people voted that way. I'm voting for the elites, and I refuse to sign it. Let the next person take care of it.
Michael, in the vein of the petrodollar, one of the things that you've said is you expect escalations of terrorist attacks, and we are seeing that. Even this week, we have saw what has happened in Istanbul, and Donald Trump has come out and even said that terror threat is now greater than ever. And I mean, we've seen Orlando this year, Paris, Brussels, Istanbul, and just on and on, San Bernardino. I want to get your thoughts on what we are seeing here in just the global geopolitical mess that the world is in.
Well, it is a mess, but again, I hate to keep harping on the same thing, problem, reaction, solution, but it's all by design. I think most of these occurrences, including Orlando, throughout Paris and around the world, are false flag events. A lot of them we can't directly attribute, but I think a lot of them can be attributed to the CIA involvement, creating these problems, instilling fear in people, looking for reactions, and trying to, and that's going to pave the way for the government to come in and say, let us take control and stop all these terrorist threats. Probably the least number of deaths in the world can be attributed to terror. You've got other natural deaths. You got automobile deaths. You got plane crashes. There are vaccine deaths. There are more typical deaths that are far greater than those deaths that can be attributed to terror. Terror is used as a political tool by the political controlling factions.
How much do you then think is attributed to the fundamentals of extreme Islam? Is it the elites playing on people's fundamental core beliefs to manipulate them into doing things that is in their interests?
I don't get into religion or politics very much. I'm aware of them. To me, Islam is a political event more than it is an actual religion, although a lot of people are fierce believers in it. But when you read the Quran, how death is exemplified in so many ways, death to this group, death to that group. And the political, the Islamist leaders politicize it and use it against their own masses, and then they use it as an excuse for everything else that goes on in the world. So I think the turmoil that's been going on in the Mideast was by design, again created going back to the 1950s and 1960s, when the people within this country were planning for 5 nations that will be brought under their control, or attempted to be brought under their control, and they were all in the Mideast, and it was all in the name of controlling oil. All of it, whether it's Islam, no matter what, always follow the money, and always goes back to money and oil and control.
Michael, when it comes to gold, let's switch gears here and talk about gold. We're seeing gold go up on higher volume and have its corrections now on low volume. How strong of a bullish indicator is this for you?
Gold is in a transition point, and at the beginning, it's just at its beginning phase, in my estimation. I think we can probably look at last November, December as the low for gold, and it is beginning to turn. We're seeing an uptrend on the daily charts, and I simply define an uptrend simply, so that everyone can agree, as a series of higher highs and higher lows, and we've seen that in gold. The corrections, even post-Brexit, when we saw that huge day, we saw a 100-day rally in gold. Unfortunately, it closed in the middle, which means there's control at the top by the sellers. But there's been very, very little give back in gold, and silver is even performing better. I think silver is going to outperform gold in the next turn of events to the upside. Silver is still entrenched in its. Well, it's the same as silver. I think a low is in for silver. The trend is just beginning to turn up now on the weekly chart. The trend is already up on the daily wall, as I already defined it. But I think you'll see silver outperform gold, and both are starting to become much more healthy than they have been.
Yeah, silver's definitely moving, and it's now over $18 an ounce. I think I'm looking at it now, $18.57. It was interesting at the beginning of the year when we saw all the markets' reaction to the Chinese news, the Chinese economy shrinking, and the panic that threw all the markets in. We saw gold spike and silver lag, and even with the Brexit, gold was moving big with on higher percentage moves than silver did, and then sure enough we're seeing silver catch up later. Do you have any insight as to why we are seeing that relationship with gold and silver?
I'm not sure that gold was outperforming silver. If you consider back to the first of the year, the gold-silver ratio, how many ounces of silver does it cost to purchase 1 ounce of gold? It was running around 84. It has been steadily declining, and as of today, it's around 72, give or take, it's even under 72. So the performance of silver is relative to gold has been favoring silver, including going into and post Brexit. So I'd have to say I can't agree with your premise that gold has been outperforming silver on a relative basis.
Well, no, I definitely do agree with you on that. But what I've seen is, in those fear trade moments, gold does move and silver lags. And go on Thursday when gold was having its 100-point move, it was up like 4.5%, 5%, something like that, and silver was only up like 2.5%. And
this is true. This is true, yes.
And so that's kind of more what I was talking about. What is this dynamic? And then, can we expect that where, gold might move and then silver has this, catch up, and even a greater catch up than the move that, gold does?
Yeah, I think you'll see the reactions in gold initially, as in Brexit, as it were, because people respond to gold more immediately, and the rush is into gold, and not so much silver. But when you smooth it out and say, okay, now that if we look over the last, not just that one-day spike, you'll see that there's a continuum in the relation between the two. But I think on the scare moments, you'll see gold always outperform.
And Michael, I want to get your thoughts on how high you think gold can go. I don't know if this is my first time actually interviewing you, and I want to know if how high do you think gold is going to go in this bullish trajectory? I mean, how serious do you see the reaction and the consequences going to be of the global financial mess, and how large of a degree will that benefit precious metals?
Well, I've always maintained for the past couple of years on my blog, I don't know. I think gold is going to go substantially higher. Silver goes substantially higher. I've acknowledged prices from other people saying $5,000, $10,000 gold the ounce, $400 silver. To me, it doesn't matter. I think for those who have them, and for the last 3 years, I have been staunchly advocating the purchase of physical gold and silver and personally holding it. Because when this thing falls apart, and it's beginning to fall apart, we're in process, the relative value of the gold and silver that people own, regardless of the price, whether it's $400 an ounce, whether it's for silver, or even $20 an ounce for silver, will be far greater relative to everything else that they can purchase with their gold and silver, because all paper assets are headed toward their intrinsic value, which is zero.
Michael, those are some great thoughts right there. I want to get your closing thoughts here. Any last words you'd like to share with the audience? And, of course, let people know a little more about your trading service and what you have to offer if they visit edgetraderplus.com.
I write a weekly commentary. It's focused primarily on gold and silver of late. Throughout the entire period when gold and silver reached their peaks in 2011, I have admitted that I will not recommend any shorts to the long side, any short positions to aid and abet the enemy, as it were. And I used to do a lot of writing on the S&P, but once the federal government became so heavily entrenched in purchasing through permanent on the pummel events with the government making a lot of purchases and supporting the stock market, I simply stopped buying on the long side of the stock market. So what they'll get is my views on the market based on what volume and price are saying, and to me, volume and price are the final arbiters of everyone else's opinions, be they from the elites or from a low-level speculator, as it were, because when they make their final decision, it has to be in the form of buying or selling in the markets, and that's when their decision really counts, and that's when you can begin to track what's going on with the reality of what the opinions are being ultimately expressed in the market.
Michael Noonan, everyone, of EdgeTraderPlus.com. Michael Noonan, thanks for coming on the show with me today. It was a real pleasure. It was nice to meet you, and I really enjoyed our discussion today. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, and I'm doing what I love, so it was a real pleasure to talk with you.
Same here, Kenneth. You can leave anytime, but like the Hotel California, you're also welcome anytime. Yeah.
All right, sir. You take care.